Deputy said thank you. First, I'll read the ethics statement for MPO board members. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. Anybody? I do have a conflict myself. It is item 3D, which is the letter of support for North Carolina Department of Transportation, the I-26 interchange, HE1 grant application, because I am employed by Gilmore Farms, who owns the property. With that, I will also say that we have special guests today that needs to leave.
Yes, so Nathan Moneyham was Division 13. He generously offered to provide an update on the I-26 connector. But Nathan's a busy man, big project, so he notified us he had to leave like 2. So we're hoping to bump his item to the front of the agenda.
So we'll need to move item 5A to 4. So I'll entertain a motion to that effect and also to approve the agenda and consent agenda. So moved. Thank you. Second. You're up already. A roll call. Who wants to do roll call?
I will need to do roll call.
I'm moving quickly.
Trying to do so. Okay. Asheville Esther Mankind.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the audio, just so you know, the audio is really difficult on the Zoom because it's like kind of noisy.
Okay, I think we closed a couple of doors. Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, perfect.
Black Mountain Archie Fertiller.
Yes.
DOT Division 14 Chuck McGrady.
Aye. Here.
Camden Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Here.
Flat Rock Ann Coletta.
Here.
Fletcher Jim Player.
Here.
Haywood County Brandon Rogers.
Here.
Hendersonville Jennifer Hensley.
Here.
Maggie Valley Mike Evelyn.
Here.
Mills River Shannon Gaunt.
Aye.
Montreat Tom Widmer.
Present.
Rural Transit David White.
Aye.
Urban Transit Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville Anthony Sutton.
Abstain.
Weaverville Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
I think the ayes do have it. Thank you. We have a lot of people. I'm impressed. Okay. Next, we are moving item 5A. So the I-2513 update. Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment.
Yeah.
Public comment. We actually have public comment today on 5. Thank you.
And we've got former MPO board member and council member and 1,000 other hats.
Thank you. Mark Hunt, Asheville City Council, the years 2011 to 15. I sat on this board for those 4 years. And I'm here mostly to celebrate, entirely to celebrate the arrival of the contract for the I-26 connector construction, at least the first couple of sections. I was lucky in 2013 to be part of the original working group that included DOT board member David Brown, Jay Swain, and others at DOT. MPO staff was involved at times. MPO board was aware, but it was at the time of the STI that the McCrory administration led, which elevated I-26 connector into a priority status, that it was headed toward reality, which we're seeing today. There was a lot of community resistance, as we all know. The members of our working group, diverse, David Brown, Jan Davis, Brownie Newman, Julie Mayfield, and others, worked really hard to build trust, collaborate, and come out with workable parts, design elements of the project so that it could function well enough for the community that we could use our own political leadership, go back and get folks on board, which is exactly what happened. It took a few years. And, of course, I left the formal scene in 2015, and I'm just amazed, folks, with the quality of this project, the way that those design elements are truly fulfilling the vision and the hopes that the local community and our leaders had. So I've just enormous appreciation to DOT staff, DOT board members, MPO leaders, staff, especially DOT engineers that thought creatively through this all along. I do want to highlight a slight concern. I read the news the past couple of days about the letting of the contract and the inclusion of the optimization and cost reduction elements. And I know those are extraordinary, very unusual measures to impose on a design build contract like this. And I don't want to say that I am worried because this process is going very well, but DOT does feel compelled to manage costs and reduce costs. And my appeal to this group, the MPO board, to the DOT, to our DOT board members, is that we keep a close eye on those elements of design and implementation that were so important to the community that they were negotiated for. And they were part of the way this design evolved. Of course, the design was exposed to the EIS process and then the record of decision. And so those kind of formalize the intent of what's going to be included. But at the specific level, on the bike path front, I want to highlight one element, that is the multi-use path and bike lanes on Riverside Drive North, part of Section D, that those are going to be vital to connect the Woodson Greenway, which has $14 million of federal money already committed to it, with RADTIP and other elements that have huge dollar amounts of commitment from the federal government, and how, in order for there to be a functional multimodal transportation network across those geographies, that Riverside Drive section needs to be tended to. Of course, Amboy Road, the Bowen Bridges, Haywood Road to Clayman Avenue connector, all that's super important too. So all of it's huge. Again, thank you for the work you have done, will do, and I beg folks to keep an eye on these certain elements that are important to the community. Thank you.
I want to personally thank you for all the work that you did previously. It will not be forgotten.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Hunt, for coming in and making your comments. This is Esther. I just wanted to say I appreciate Mark making those comments, and he was my partner on council and working on this project. So thank you for all your work, Mark.
Thank you. It's been a long haul, and I'm sure it'll be a long haul to get it to completion, but the exciting thing is it's moving forward. Things are actually happening. Next is the I-2513 update.
Sure, and I appreciate y'all accommodating me and kind of letting me go first. I think it worked out well for me to follow. Covered a lot of history there that I may not have to cover, and most people in this room are familiar with the long history of this project. And really just Tristan had asked that we give an update with this major milestone we've met this week. I know it's been in the news and we've done the press, but we have officially awarded the BD contract, the large design build section of the connector. The contract amount is $1.14 billion, and we're excited to get started. The history really with that recent history in the past 3 months, everybody's familiar, this is our second round that we opened bids in February. The bids were basically the same as they were this week. So the question becomes, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is, and it was alluded to in public comment, that we have included this optimization and refinement piece of of the connector. The reason we've done that is because the bids that we've received are significantly above the planned funding for the project. And when we opened bids in February and recognized that, we immediately knew that we needed some mechanism to keep this project moving forward. It was in significant danger of, again, taking another round of significant delays due to those cost increases. So in that time period, DOT, in partnership with Federal Highways, we developed this process specific to this contract, really to keep it moving. And to give you some background on what that is basically we've included in our contract now a 6-month period at the beginning of the contract to work one-on-one openly with the contractor to reduce that cost, to get it down to the point that we can fully fund it and begin construction. We're confident that we can do that. We've already had some initial meetings with the teams. We have some good ideas of how to do that. The key tenet to that, as was mentioned, is there's a whole lot of commitments and a whole lot of work that led up to the FEIS and the ROD. Those are sacred. We know that those can't be touched. And that's something we're committed to do. We also know and have had many conversations with local stakeholders. We know what the priorities are, and know what framework we need to work inside to get the cost down, to ultimately deliver a project that meets all the commitments that have been made and provides all the congestion and safety benefits that we've all been pushing forward towards for 30 years. The other big benefit of this process and doing it post-award is the confidentiality is a big part of the design-build process. We've been working with our 3 teams to get to this point of awarding really over the past year. And because it's a competitive process, because there's proprietary information, the confidentiality is significant. There's not a lot of information we can share. Now that we've awarded and we're doing this optimization refinement process post-award, we can do it publicly. We can do it in coordination with NPO. We can do it in coordination with the city, with the county, and all the local stakeholders, so that we're being open with the changes that may come. The other thing that I'll say about this process, just to allay any concerns, is the things that we're looking at to reduce are inherently associated with the procurement method that we're using. Design-build method is a great process. We've had great success with it in North Carolina, but it comes with a lot of risk. These contractors are bidding all this work to design and construct with a lot of unknowns, and it drives the price up. So when we talk about optimization and refinement, we're not necessarily talking about losing commitments and pieces of the project. There may be some of that comes, and we'll coordinate those with the project limit shifting here and there maybe, but again, to the roadway items, maintaining all the multimodal connections that have been committed to, and all those things. We're not looking to undo anything, but our main focus is to reduce the cost by looking for construction inefficiencies that we can correct, looking at things we can do with material escalations. That's another big cost we have. Utility relocation risks, things that we're going to spend a lot of time working on over the next 6 months to try and get the cost down, that for the end product of the project, you wouldn't really notice. And that's where our focus is, and we think we've got a lot of potential there to really bring that number down into an acceptable range for us at DOT and where we are with the funding, and still deliver the project that's been conceived really over 30 years. And we're confident in that process and excited to be able to do it and do it openly with coordination with local stakeholders and keeping everybody involved and aware of what's going on. That's the big project. That's where we are. I'm happy to take questions or conversation, I guess, Tristan, or...
Sure. I mean, I do want to point out, for those of you who aren't aware, I mean, Nathan's primarily referring to sections B and D of the I-26 connector. In the map, I'll zoom in a little bit before it gets too grimy, but that's basically the green section that's highlighted there. That goes from roughly the Haywood Road interchange in the south up to Broadway. That includes the new bridges over the French Broad River, improvements to Patton Avenue, redoing of the Haywood Road interchange. That's that's a lot of Section B. Section D actually used to be its own project. That was improvements to Riverside Drive that Mark Hunt was referring to. The reason why those are kind of being packaged together is because they're right next to each other. As construction starts happening on Section B, that's going to be impacting Section D of Riverside Drive, and vice versa. So, and as Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the largest design build project the state has ever done?
It is the largest contract, as of this week with the award, it's the largest contract that's ever been awarded in the state.
So this is a big project, folks. This is our biggest project. It's been worked on since 1989. I was 4 years old. I now have a 4-year-old. So it has been the topic of conversation for a long time. And to Mark's point, to Nathan's point, there's been a ton of community discussion, a ton of collaboration and coordination. And that, you know, I've heard people in the community say, this isn't going to happen in my lifetime. This is very close to happening. And so I do think, you know, Nathan's update and keeping up with Nathan, that's, and what's going on with this project, this is a big deal.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Anyway, this may be a naive question, pardon if it is. How far into the future will section, what you might call Section E, as you come north toward Woodfin? We've still got the missing mile on the Greenway, as the town of Woodfin is wringing its hands trying to figure out what to do with traffic and parking regarding Riverside Park and our way. Is there any guess how far in the future Riverside Drive might be addressed north of Broadway?
We do have another project coming that ties into 2513, that's A10. And it's on a little further out schedule. It doesn't really address, I don't think, the area you're talking about, which would be more 251.
Yes, yes, sir.
So I don't know, and Tristan may have a better knowledge. I don't know if we've got anything step-wise in that area.
There's nothing in the currently planned in the STIP. In long-range plans, 251 is identified for needing upgrades, but that's something that would need to continue to be prioritized to move up.
Speaking on behalf of the town of Woodfin, we have a much shorter term need in that we're going to have somewhere between a few hundred and a few tens of thousands of people trying to access the intersection of Elk Mountain Road and Riverside Drive. And we've already been told by NCDOT, do not create a disaster. If there's any way that this organization or anyone else can help us prevent that, we'd be most appreciative.
Well, and I'm sure, and more interested can't be mine, there's all kinds of ways you can pursue funding for 251 and this other project. But I will say about A10, what we do have funded in the plan is that it does address the Broadway interchange and the congestion and the signal. So that access, at least from 26, would be addressed in project. But the limits of that are pretty much limited to the interchange. As far as what's currently.
And the real estate in neighborhoods off of Riverside Drive, new subdivisions entering it left and right, we've already got a very serious safety problem, and we're in, as Mark well knows, we don't have much time to figure out some short-term solutions. So I hope we can keep that in the forefront, at least of our thought. But I appreciate your information being candid.
We do have a question from Kim Roney. Kim, thank you for politely raising your hand.
Kim Roney, City of Asheville, and I wanted to lift up a specific concern that's been consistent from the Burton Street neighborhood that's impacted both historically and currently in Section B of this project. So when we look at the design build, which we are often told that we needed to wait until now to lift up concerns like these, so this is that moment. When we're looking at cost savings, but also the incredible impact this project is going to have in our community, what kind of positive impact might it have if we're looking at ways to benefit impacted by communities by hiring, especially minority and women-owned businesses, to do some of this contracting and subcontracting work? So might you be able to speak a little bit about what kinds of ways that the value engineering or cost savings might look at the cost savings of hiring local?
Well, and I don't know that it's specific to the optimization process, but as a part of any contract we do set and enforce DBE goals, which includes minority-owned, women-owned businesses. For this project, I think the goal is 5%. So in the initial award process that we're going through with Archer Western, working towards execution of the contract here in the next couple of weeks, verifying the commitments with them is part of what's going on now. So they have to identify 5% of the work to be subcontracted out, specifically to disenfranchised businesses. And when you're talking about the scale of this project, 5% of $1 billion is a lot of money. So I think that's something that will be a big positive locally. I think the other thing we're trying to do, even outside of the large project, is there are a lot of commitments in the Bourbon Street Neighborhood Plan and the ROD that we have pulled out of the large contract, so that we can let them separately over the next several years. Things that make sense for smaller contractors to pursue as a prime. Because lots of times if you got a local contractor who's small, just getting started, working with a company like Archer, who is massive, is intimidating. So we've tried to pull out some smaller pieces of work, especially in the area of the project adjacent to those neighborhoods, where we can let smaller contracts specifically geared towards smaller businesses, so that there's opportunity for them to participate in the work.
Thank you so much for that answer. I'm learning through this process that breaking out contracts into smaller pieces can help to address our goals. I'd be grateful for any kind of information that we might share back with the folks who are impacted about what this could look like and how I would help them find that 5% goal, whether it's at the DOT level or at this project level.
Sure, and we are going to continue to do additional outreach as we move forward. We've done several events, and we'll continue to do them as far as through the Office of Rights has generally put those on. We did one recently at the Chamber of Commerce that was actually bilingual to try and foster, and we have a lot of resources through Civil Rights too for companies like that are trying to build their business and need help with some of the technical aspects of even getting certified to do state work, those kind of things. So we'll continue to share those outreach efforts. And now that we have Archer Western on board as the winning team, they'll be able to participate in that as well, and continue with outreach efforts on their own to try and foster that as we get closer to actual construction.
I appreciate that commitment and update. Thank you so much.
Any other comments, questions? I'll tell you, this was the project that got me interested in transportation in 1989. And I actually remember coming to meetings, and I was 4 years old. But thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. And I just want to say really quick, I really appreciate the division's collaborative approach to this and keeping everyone in the loop. I actually didn't ask Nathan to come provide this presentation. I would have, but Nathan asked me first, or offered first, I guess I should say. And so just want to reiterate that, especially with a project this big, with this many moving parts, I really appreciate that. And I think to touch on something Jim said, just so folks are aware, we do have a quarterly Greenway coordination group that we've been involving DOT, Woodson staff, Buncombe County staff, and the city of Asheville. There's 3 Greenway projects in this little stretch that are tying into each other, hopefully. Well, I shouldn't say now they are, but there's a lot going on in this little stretch. It plays a huge role in local Greenway plans. It plays a big role in the Hellbender Regional Plan, and it plays a big role in the Great Trail State Plan. This is a very, very important section, especially for our multimodal planning. So we have been convening partners and project managers to make sure all the pieces are coming together. And again, thanks to DOT for coming to the table and providing us a whole lot of information.
Thank y'all, and we'll continue to share. Like I said, the next 6 months are going to be critical, and we'll be open with that as it starts to take shape and be involved in local stakeholders as much as possible.
Any other questions? I'm sure we'll be talking about this for the next 5 years.
I'm sure.
Hopefully just 5. Next is on to the business items, 4H 5310 project selection.
With that, I will hand it off to Anthony. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about 5310 and JARC project selection. We're going to start with 5310. So 5310 is enhanced mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities. It's a STA federal transit grant that makes federal resources available to improve mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities by removing barriers to transportation services and expanding mobility options. 5310 is allocated to the Asheville urbanized area, and the city of Asheville serves as the designated recipient for these funds. The application for 5310 and the application for JARC was open from January 18th to March 18th of this year. 5310 is split into 2 categories of funding: traditional or capital projects, and then other or operations projects. 53 for traditional projects, 55% of the total funding available must go to traditional projects. That 55% is a floor, not a ceiling. We have to allocate 55% of funds to traditional projects. The other 45% of funds, 10% of that goes to the city of Asheville for administration of the funds, and then 35% can be allocated towards other projects. So this year we had $504,000 available. After the admin fee, we had $454,000 to allocate. $277,000 of those dollars must go to traditional projects, and then $176,000 can go towards other projects. We received 5 applications for 5310. Sorry, my brain just stopped for a second. The 2 projects that are highlighted in yellow are traditional projects, and the 3 that are not highlighted are other projects, and that will carry on throughout the presentation anytime you see a table. So our applicants for traditional was Buncombe County for their supplemental EdTap program, and they requested $158,000. And then the city of Asheville requested $248,000 for their paratransit service. For the other projects, Buncombe County requested $40,000 for their ride voucher program. Land of Sky Regional Council requested $126,000 for their senior companions program. And the Council on Aging requested about $40,000 for their call a ride service. So the full score sheets are in your agenda packet, but this is just a score recap. For traditional projects, both Buncombe County SteadTap and the City of Asheville Paratransit both scored a 95. For other projects, Buncombe County Ride scored a 90, Land of Sky Senior Companion scored an 87, and the Council on Aging's Call a Ride scored an 85. So this is just a little bit of a funding outlook. So the total ask for traditional projects was $406,000. The total ask for other projects was $207,000, which the total ask was $613,900, and we only had $454,000 to allocate. So the projects submitted we're about $160,000 over how much we have to allocate. So that's just to say that projects probably will not be getting their full ask. And then this is just an FY22 comparison before we get into the scoring or the scenarios. For FY22, we had about $6,500 more than we do this year to allocate. And in FY22, the city of Asheville forgoed their 10% admin for a 6% admin. And that meant that we could fund all the projects at 100%. This year, that is not the case. We have less money, and even if the city of Asheville forgoed their 10% admin fee, we'd still be left in about $110,000 deficit. So I'm going to describe 4 different funding alternatives for the project. So alternative 1 is to distribute the funds based strictly on scores, not using the 55-35% split. So the Buncombe County STEDTAP and the city of Asheville both scored a 95, so they receive 100% of their ask. Buncombe County's RIDE voucher program was the next highest scoring project. They would receive 100% of their ask. And then Land of Sky Senior Companions would receive 6% of their ask, so they'd be funded at about $7,000. And the Council on Aging would receive $0. This funding alternative works because we have to allocate at least $277,000 to traditional projects, and if we fund both of the traditional projects at their full amount, it is over that $277,000 threshold. Alternative 2 is to keep the 55-35% split between traditional and other projects, but use the scores to determine the funds. So Buncombe County STEDTAP and the city of Asheville, because they received the same score, they would split that $277,000 evenly down the middle. And then Buncombe County RIDE voucher program would receive 100% because they scored the next highest. Land of Sky Senior Companions would score the next highest, so they would also receive 100% of their funds. And the Council on Aging's ColorRide would receive about $9,000 or 23% of their ask because they were the lowest scoring project. For funding alternative 3, we would keep the 55-35% split for traditional and other projects, but we would forget the scores for this alternative, and we would award equal percentages of the 55% split to traditional projects and equal percentages of the 35% split to other projects. So with this, the traditional projects would each receive 68.4% of their ask, and then the other projects would each receive 84.9% of their ask. And I'm going to have all of these alternatives on one slide at the end, so don't think you have to keep this in your mind. So alternative 4 is both the prioritization and the TCC recommendation, and prioritization subcommittee created this recommendation after the discussion at the May 1st meeting, and it's basically a combination of 2 alternatives. So we would keep the 55-35% split for traditional and other projects. We'd split the traditional allocation amount evenly between the city of Asheville and Buncombe County, and we award equal percentages of the 35% split to other projects. So what that would look like would be Buncombe County STEDTAP and the city of Asheville Paratransit would split that $277,000 down the middle, each receiving $138,000. And then Buncombe County's RIDE voucher program, Land of Sky Senior Companions, and Council on Aging's ColorRide would each receive about 85.017% of their ask. Here are all of the alternatives on one page. Alternative 1, again, is based strictly on scores. Alternative 2 is using that 55-35 split using scores. Alternative 3 is the 55%-35% split, distributing equal percentages for each applicant, not using scores. And then alternative 4 is a combination of alternative 2 and 3, with keeping that 55%-35% split, splitting the traditional allocation amount evenly between Buncombe County SteadTap and the City of Asheville Paratransit, and award equal percentages of the 35% split to the other projects. And the TCC and prioritization both recommended alternative 4. But if anybody has any questions or would like to make a motion.
Do you want to have any discussion, or do you want further clarification as to why the prioritization and the TCC both recommended?
Thank you, sir. I think just a good point of clarification, or some good context with that. With alternative 4, I think what people wanted to do was make sure that the non-traditional projects still had funding available, a sufficient amount. As you saw with some of the other alternatives, there's some projects receiving $7,000. I will just say, we're happy to make grant funds available, but $7,000 for a federal grant is not going to be worth your time. Making sure that there was enough money for the non-traditional projects, and also with the traditional projects, the split between Buncombe County and the City of Asheville, one of the big things was that the City of Asheville paratransit project, that's a required project. That project has to happen whether or not funds are awarded. The Buncombe County project is one that is not required. So if it isn't awarded funding, there's a chance that project doesn't exist. So in discussions with our subcommittee, there was a unanimous vote on this alternative. So splitting the funding, essentially, the same amount for each project. That kind of reflects a priority of let's make sure projects that wouldn't exist otherwise kind of get a bit more of the priority. And we've been requested by that subcommittee to revisit our methodology to make sure that's reflected. So that's why the split between the traditional projects is the way it is, and making sure there's enough non-traditional funding. I get all that.
Plus, the scoring is not like black and white. There's some gray area on scoring, so we've not to rely strictly on scoring either.
Absolutely.
We were saying in prioritization that the questions in the score sheet are a little squishy, so they can be interpreted different ways. So we're going to revisit scoring in the future to make sure that we're emphasizing those projects that wouldn't exist without 5310 funding.
Does that answer your?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Please. If there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Yes, make a motion to accept the recommendation of both subcommittees and approve alternative 4.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
This is
Second?
Kim.
Yes. Kim offers a second. Okay.
Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Asheville, Esther Manheimer.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Patiller.
Aye.
BOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Rolf Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Slayer.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Eveland.
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Grom.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Rural Transit, David White.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. Woodson, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Thank you. I would like to thank the prioritization subcommittee because we spent probably 90 minutes on this subject. So thank you everyone that survived that. And we will have changes for next year, which is good. Next is JARC project selection. I guess you're up again.
Yeah, I'm up again. This one should be a little bit easier. JARC, or Job Access Reverse Commute, is a program, again, through FTA that aims to improve access to transportation services to employment and employment-related activities for welfare recipients and eligible low-income individuals, and transport them to urbanized areas and non-urbanized areas to suburban employment opportunities. JARC funding to the MPO region is calculated based on a 10% set aside from the 5307 allocated amount. Again, the designated recipient for JARC funds is the city of Asheville, and the JARC call for projects ran from January 18th to March 18th, concurrently with the 5310 call for projects. We only had one application, or we had $408,000 available for the JARC program this year. We only had one application, and that was for the city of Asheville for ARC routes 170 and S3. Route 170 serves Swannanoa and Black Mountain, while Route S3 serves South Asheville, Arden, and the Asheville Airport. And the city of Asheville requested $408,000. They requested all of the funds for the routes 170 and S3. They scored a 95 on their application, and we only have one alternative, and that is to fund the city of Asheville ART routes 170 and S3 at 100% of their ask of $408,000.
That was the easiest one. Even though we did still have discussion about it. Is there any comments, questions?
This is Kim. I'm prepared to move to approve the recommended funding allocation.
Thank you, Kim. Do we have a second?
Second.
Larry, second.
All right. Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Asheville, Esther Manheimer.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Pertiller.
Aye.
COT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Flair.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Gahn.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Rural Transit, David White.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. Aye. Woodson, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
I passed.
Thank you.
I will get better.
We are very patient here because we, as we know, you have probably 20 or 30 years to do that. Thank you, everyone. Next is the amendment to the 24 to 33 Transportation Improvement Program.
All right, and with that, I will hand it off to Logan.
Okay, so as you can see in your packet, there are quite a few amendments to the TIP this month. I think there's 42. So we can start with our locally administered projects. There's two amendments to, I guess three technically, to our locally administered projects. There's a sizable change in termini scope to ED 5547A and B. That was originally a greenway project called the Black Mountain Riverwalk Greenway in Black Mountain, and it was to connect into the Oaks Trail to the Flat Creek Greenway, and it was originally going to kind of go south and around of downtown Black Mountain to connect those two greenways. Due to feasibility issues, that's not really feasible anymore. So the the termini and scope are changing to, well, the scope is changing to on-street bike ped connections, so sidewalk and bike lane or sharrows, not a bike lane, sharrows. And the termini is changing from the Flat Creek Greenway to the intersection of NC9 and Sutton Ave in downtown Black Mountain. So it's a pretty sizable termini change as well, but I will note that the town of Black Mountain is pursuing bike ped connections from the termini of this project to the Flat Creek Greenway. So there will still be bike ped connections there, just not funded through the TIF. There's also a shift in funding and the addition of a right-of-way phase to BL0008, which is the Clear Creek Greenway in Hendersonville. There's no cost increases or decreases, it's just the addition of a right-of-way phase, shifting of those funds from engineering. Beyond locally administered projects, there's 15 rail safety project additions to the TIP that cover Haywood, Buncombe, and Henderson counties. We don't have a ton of rail projects in the TIP, so it's pretty cool to see 15 new ones being added. You can see those projects and a map of where they're located in your packet. Let's see, there's also an increase in funds to some Division 13 and 14 programs to upgrade intersections to comply with ADA, and a shuffle of a number of bridge improvement projects to a shuffle of funds for and schedules for a number of bridge improvement projects to balance funds and projected schedules. There's also the reflection of 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Program funds for a number of transit projects in Haywood, Henderson, and Buncombe County, and the addition of two statewide projects, ER 5600, which is vegetation management, and HB 0001, which is NEVI planning and construction funds, which are essentially EV infrastructure on identified NEVI corridors in the state. That's it.
I'm sure everyone lived through every single thing.
As noted in the email, we are working with our software provider on trying to find a way to summarize these TIP amendments a bit more. Someone asked if I could just provide it as a link. I'm going to be stubborn. This is one of the more important things we do as an MPO. Monitor projects, their costs, their scope changes, make sure that that's acceptable to our local government. So hopefully we'll get that fixed soon. In the meantime, we might have some beefy packets. I also do want to make a quick point on the Black Mountain project. This project has been in the works for a long, long time. To me, this project, I think there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of coordination. But to me, one of the big takeaways is that this project to me highlights one of the reasons why feasibility studies are so important. This project was very complicated from the get-go, and having a project with a preliminary alignment start into design and engineering with federal funds, and then find out that that alignment isn't feasible, puts our local governments in a very tough spot. To me, doing things like feasibility studies, getting kind of a preliminary eye on your preferred alignments and seeing, what are your environmental challenges going to be, that's really, really important to trying to have successful projects. And so we're going to keep pushing our feasibility studies to try to make sure that our projects can have a better chance of staying on track. I won't say that guarantees everything will go great. But in the meantime, I do think the changes to this project help us move forward with those community connections through Black Mountain.
I'll say anything involving Sutton can be difficult at some point. The name of the road in Black Mountain. Do we have any other discussion questions? We do need a motion to approve the changes. Well, I'll entertain any motions. Larry Harris makes first. Second? I'll second. Second? So we're ready for a roll call?
All right, Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Asheville, Esther Manheimer. Black Mountain, Archie Pertiller.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Camden, Dr. Ralph Hamlet. Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Flair.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Eblin.
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Gahn.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Rural Transit, David White.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Calvin Cordell.
Aye.
Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. That was so beefy, it took me the entire time to scroll through.
Next item.
I'm sorry, Mayor Manheimer, you have your hand raised?
I managed to drop myself off right before I voted.
Thank you, thank you.
Next is the MPO local input point methodology.
Okay, just in general, this item goes to the prioritization process, or P7, that we are currently going through. One of the big parts of the prioritization process that helps determine what projects get funded and what projects don't is local input points that are provided from the MPO or NCDOT division. As part of determining how we use our local input points, every MPO, RPO, and division is required to have a methodology kind of spelling out what our general process is. Just a quick overview on how local input points influence the score of projects. As a reminder, there's 3 different funding tiers. The first is statewide mobility. That's the funding tier that covers our interstates, as well as US 2374 in Haywood and Asheville Airport. Local input points do not play a role in that tier. We will find out what projects get funded or don't based on what's called the quantitative score that looks at congestion, safety, economic development, and other measures. We will find out that information. That's expected to be released May 24th. And so local input points, that does not apply to that tier. The next tier is regional impact. That is, basically it covers our US and MC routes, but it can also cover any project from the statewide mobility tier that isn't funded. So if we have an interstate project that doesn't get funded at statewide mobility, we may consider that project in regional impact or even division needs. In that funding tier, projects compete across what's called Region G, which is Division 13 and 14. And the MPO's local input points account for 15% of a project score. So if we put points on a project in that tier, projects get a 15% boost in their score, essentially. If we don't, then 0%. It doesn't sound like much, but it plays an important role. Then into division needs. The division needs funding tier covers secondary roads, bike ped projects, and transit projects, as well as anything from the other tiers that we want to have considered at the division needs level. Projects are considered division by division, so Division 13 projects compete with each other, Division 14 projects compete with each other. And local input points play a more important role, or a larger role in scoring. If we put local input points on a project, that gives a project a 25% boost in its score. And so it makes it more likely to be funded. In general, what's in your packet is our methodology for how we will determine what projects get local input points or not. So I'll provide try to be brief summary on this. But to note, This is roughly the exact same thing that was adopted in 2020 when we thought we would be going through P6, but with a couple of minor changes that I'll note. One of the important things to point out is our cascading policy. And so that goes to the idea of the 3 tiers and what projects we consider. So if we have statewide mobility projects or interstate projects that aren't funded at statewide mobility, how do we determine whether or not we want them to compete in regional impact? Our policy is those projects have to come one by one to the MPO, TCC, and board for consideration. And that applies to all projects that are cascaded. And to note, we have done that a number of times in the past. But again, in order to cascade those projects based on our methodology, the board has to specifically approve that cascading. That's one of the big things. Then we have a way of scoring projects internally. So with highway projects, the category that gets the most weight is safety. So we will be looking at project safety scores that come out of the quantitative score. Next up is congestion. So projects will be ranked based on congestion scores. Non-motorized transportation options, that's looking at both the risk to the non-motorized transportation modes, as well as the treatments that are being considered with those projects. Freight is next up. Where projects are in the planning process, so we give greater weight to projects that are in regional and local plans, as opposed to projects that have bubbled up. Not to say those aren't important too. Looking at some of the environmental criteria, we look at projects that are within existing water and sewer service areas, and looking at congestion measures that are in line with the region's congestion management process. That's the document the MPO adopted, saying if there's congestion on certain routes, here's the ways that we prefer for that congestion to be addressed. Also something relatively new that we added in 2020 is looking at resiliency. So looking at projects that intersect with floodplains, historic landslide locations, and identified wildlife corridors. I think something we hear more and more about are resiliency concerns with our transportation network, especially with the things that have happened in Canton recently, in Hendersonville. I think every time there's a decent rain, Mud Creek is filling up and going over its banks, and I-40. I think that the Pigeon River Gorge speaks for itself. So that's one thing that is relatively new to the process. And also local priorities. So just a little bit on this. You all should have received meeting invitations for county-by-county meetings. The Henderson TAC, I think that's been coordinated with local staff. But we want to know what the priorities are by county and make sure that those are reflected. There are things that aren't accounted for in data and quantitative measures. Let's hear it from our board members as well as our TCC members. And that'll be a consideration as we score. Non-highway modes, the way that we score projects and rank them is much easier. We look at how they scored with the quantitative score. So basically, did the project score well and does it have a decent chance or not? And where projects are in the planning process as well as those local priorities. Those are the main things that we'll be considering. And that applies for aviation, biped, transit, as well as rail. So a couple of things that have been added since the last time the board adopted this is one, we added rail. we now have rail projects. We've never had rail projects before in prioritization. So we do have the passenger rail project that we've had a few presentations, as well as some rail crossing projects being considered. So rail has been added as part of this. The other thing to note is, oh, I went too far. Previously, we had a policy that we would essentially put points on projects until we were out of points, and we have 1,900 points. You can put 100 points per project, so you can put points on 19 projects. So we would say we'll put points until we're out, or we'll put points on projects until we're out of points, or until we exceed 150% of the anticipated budget, or what's the amount of funding that's available. The reason we put that in there in 2020 is that previously we would find out that there was $100 million available, and we would be putting points on $2 billion worth of projects. It's not the most efficient use. So trying to make the most the greatest cost benefit to the use of our points is kind of the idea there. But one of the more recent additions is instead of setting a ceiling, also setting a floor. We know that funding is going to be very, very limited this round. So we're basically saying at a minimum, we will put points on 3 highway projects and 1 non-highway project per funding tier. And that's the minimum that we will put on projects. Ann actually emailed me before the meeting and noted that there were a few places where it wasn't entirely clear. So just to be clear, that is what's spelled out in the policy. If there's an insufficient amount of funding, we will put points on 3 highway projects and 1 non-highway project. That would be our policy. And to point out, all of this is advisory. So a lot of what I've just explained, that gives us kind of the first stab at what projects we'll prioritize. But as we spell out in our methodology, the MPO, TCC, and board have full discretion over what projects get points. So if folks believe that we aren't prioritizing the projects we should based on the methodology, our board is free to make those adjustments. Any questions or comments?
We do need to actually vote on this methodology, correct?
Correct. And this has been approved by the prioritization subcommittee, as well as the NCDOT committee that oversees local and point methodologies.
And we'll tell you, we talked about it at length.
And when will we be assigning these points again?
Oh, that's a great question. So we actually have a relatively short window. The quantitative scores come out May 24th. I should say they're scheduled to come out May 24th. They don't, that's not my fault. From there, we have our meeting scheduled to take place prior to our June prioritization meeting. And then we'll be bringing draft point assignments to the TCC and board in June. We put those out for public comment. Those will be out for comment through July, and then we'll come back for our final point assignment in August. I will just note, a few people have emailed asking questions about funding available. We don't have those numbers as of yet. The last projection we saw for our regional impact tier was negative 74 million available. So we're likely to use the minimum number of points this round. But as an MPO, we haven't stated our priorities since 2018. It has been that long since we've gone through a full round of prioritization. Whether or not there's funding, I still think there's validity in stating our region's priorities and what we wish we could have funded.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve the methodology. So then, first and a second from Mr. Harris. So we get to go on to voting.
All right, Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Asheville, Esther Manheimer.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Pertiller.
Aye.
DOT, Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Slayer.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers. Henderson County, Rebecca McCall. Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Gaunt.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Rural Transit, David White.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
Woodson, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Yeah, I have it.
Thank you. That concludes the business section of our meeting, which we got done in an hour and 8 minutes, which is, I think, impressive. Going on to the informational items, we have FY 2024 5307 sub-allocations.
Rolls right off the tongue. One second. I will say this is an item that, honestly, in the past, has just been an email that we send to transit operators. But it's something that the MPO does play an important role in determining how 5307 funds are used. And so we thought it would be good to bring this up more than once every 3 to 4 years. And FY24 is, what's happening is especially important. So first of all, what are 5307 funds? Those are funds made available from FTA for urban areas and their transit systems. The funds are eligible to be used for operations, capital improvements, as well as planning. This is one of the largest programs within FTA. In terms of the role the MPO plays in determining 5307 allocations, is essentially the federal government comes out every year and says, these urbanized areas get X amount of funding. From there, the MPO determines how we split those funds up across the region. We have multiple transit agencies, so we have to figure out how those funds are going to get divvied out. From there, the designated recipient, which is the city of Asheville in our region, they move forward and execute the project. So essentially, the MPO says, this much money is going to these agencies. The city of Asheville executes contracts with those various agencies to provide those funds. And they're also required to oversee the subrecipients. With the 2020 urban area, just to note, that's defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. This is the general area where 5307 funds are eligible to be used. So it's not the MPO boundaries, it's what the U.S. Census Bureau determines as the urban boundaries. So for us, for 2020, there's 3 eligible recipients. That's the city of Asheville, Buncombe County, and Henderson County. That is a relatively big change from how we did things previously. So before the 2020 urbanized area came out, we used the 2010 urbanized area. And in the 2010 urbanized area, Haywood County was part of the Asheville urban area. That changed in 2020 with some of the changes to the criteria that the U.S. Census Bureau used.
If you recall, we missed it by, I think, 4 people.
4 houses.
4 houses.
If anyone is planning to build 4 new housing units somewhere between Canton and the Buncombe County line. We're gonna get that urbanized boundary back in 2030.
It's already been done.
That might have. But yeah, in general, the urbanized boundary shifted, and so who can receive these funds shifted as well. And so, as you can see, utilizing the MPO's adopted formula on how we split up these funds, Haywood County's portion, they used to get 8.3% of the funds. For FY24, that goes to 0%. Haywood County Transit will no longer be eligible for urban transit funds. It'll simply be rural transit funds. And we've been working with them on that transition. That shifts a number of things. The city of Asheville's portion will go up from 42% to almost 47%. Buncombe County will go up from 28% to almost 32%. And Henderson will go from 20% to 21%. Yeah, we'll be having quite a shift in the funding. In terms of raw numbers, that means for FY24, the city of Asheville will get more than $1.7 million in 5307 funding. Buncombe County will receive over 1.1, and Henderson County will receive a little over 787,000. And to note, we do set aside 10% of these funds for job access reverse commute. That'll be 412,000 and change. Also just to look at kind of the bigger picture, this has been our region's allotment of funds over the last several years. As you can see, we had a big jump between 2021 and 2022 with the bipartisan infrastructure law. But in general, we've seen steady increases in this amount of funding. And to note, our region gets more than $4 million per year. Come on, computer. There we go. And also, because new urban areas are being applied for how funds are distributed, we wanted to look at our region and other regions and how this funding was shifting. So these are the various regions, or the large urban areas of North Carolina that receive these funds. In general, we receive one of the smaller allotments of funds for the Asheville urban area. But we are, relative to these others, one of the smaller urban areas. But in terms of shifts, even though Haywood County fell out of the Asheville urban area, our population still slightly increased. So we did receive a very small increase in our change to our region's apportionment from 23 to 24. Hickory and Durham are the only regions that saw a decrease in their allotments. And to note, Concord especially did quite well with the new urban boundaries with more than a 20% increase. Just to note, in general, this is a large source, the largest source of federal transit funds for our region. There are changes afoot, and this will be the first fiscal year that we will be providing these funds to 3 rather than 4 subrecipients. Are there any questions or comments on this item?
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Oh, Kim.
Yeah, I definitely have a couple comments here. So thank you for giving me a window to address them. I'm going to support this today for sure, but I have some lingering concerns. So I understand the spirit of the 5307 funds is supposed to be based on the size of the system and the number of people served. But the local ranking seems to maybe either have that flipped or somehow it's not, it doesn't appear to me that it's working how it's intended. So even though we're not receiving as much as I think that we should, because Asheville has the biggest system, which means we're able to spend the funds in a timely manner. Asheville and Buncombe are approaching an intergovernmental staff level conversation about what more collaborative planning and service could look like. And so it's my appreciation of that promise that's making my support possible today. I know that a strong core in Western North Carolina of transit service is the kind of foundation we need to be able to expand and grow the regional transportation choices that commuters are demanding of us. So what does that look like? Our Artsy Coalition, we have the local AARP chapter, Mountain True, Better Buses Together, Just Economics, and Sierra Club are among the groups, along with transit riders, that are asking us to increase service along our South Asheville corridors down Hendersonville Road. Those S3 and S6 are only every 90 minutes right now. We're being asked to extend that to 45-minute service. We have need in the Inca Candler area, which we would need to collaborate together, that could help with connecting major employers with their employees and potential workers, but also customers. We have housing development for affordable housing, for workforce housing, that are in those areas, but they aren't served by transit. So that means the only choice people have is a car. So it's that kind of collaborative spirit that's definitely needed. And that's why I'm going to be supporting it today. But if not, if we can't get to that kind of collaboration, we're going to have to do something, because right now, I don't think that the 5307 is like getting out into the community the way that it could and maybe should.
Just a point of clarification. This is just an informational item today. The MPO did vote on the formula last September. So this is just kind of the output of that formula. The formula is something that I think is reconsidered every few years. So just to note that that is likely to come up again in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Any other comments? Next, going up to updates, Division 13.
Thank you. I'm Brendan Merrithew. I'm in the Division 13 pre-construction unit, and usually Hannah Smith would be giving these updates, but she's out this week. So please, if you do have questions that I can't answer, I will get them to the appropriate person that, if Hannah would normally be able to get your answers. And also, I just want to know, just as a courtesy, I'll be leaving after my updates. I need to get to Swananoa pretty soon. So I'm going to start with construction, and I'm not sure what Nathan covered entirely regarding the I-26 and I-47. I know we went over the B&D section of I-26. Hannah gave me just a little bit of a heads up on a lane, switching lanes in the I-47 project. So the contractor is working on the eastbound permanent alignment between Blue Ridge Parkway and the south end of the project. There are now 4 lanes from the Long Shoals eastbound I-26 on-ramp to the Airport Road eastbound I-26 off-ramp. And the goal is to have the eastbound traffic on the new eastbound lanes from exit 37 to the south end of the project by the end of July. So that shot is there'll be a lane shift, switching over to what's recently been constructed. And there are some various, not just the segmental bridge that you've seen come together, but there's other bridge work that's just coming in between that switch. So as long as the rest of the bridge work that they need to do is completed in the next couple months, you'll see that switch. And the other thing I want to touch on quickly was the I-40 closures. I know there was a little bit of some confusion early on, and we had the closure this past weekend. We do not have a schedule going forward. There'll be, several more, 4, 5, or 6 more closures. And so speaking to Nathan just briefly, we'll know in the next, it's not going to be this weekend, but we'll know, and we'll send out press releases and get that communication. It's undetermined at this time. But that's all the construction updates I have, unless anybody has a question.
One major,
I'm sure I did.
I-26 Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge, they did do the final pour, and it's been completed.
Yeah, so now that that's in place, you'll see demolition of the previous bridge. That's going to be a little while, several months, maybe, I think they said 4 or 5.
Yeah, just 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
Because they won't start the demolition until they have the Blue Ridge Parkway completed.
Correct, until traffic's on the bridge. Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
think probably around August or September, you'll start seeing some demo of the bridge.
It's a whole nother
There'll be
discussion.
closures for that as well.
Yeah. But, so we could move on to some of the projects that are in development, some updates. The Liberty Road interchange is in right-of-way. That schedule, the let schedule has been pushed in the previous years, and currently it's for June of 27. We're about 40% complete with right-of-way acquisition for that project. The Sweeten Creek Road project, which has been on hold for the last couple of years, it had gone into the merger process, and we were long enough to have conceptual designs and a public meeting. Because the project has been offline for so long, you essentially rescope with the consultant to just pick up where you left off. And the project's been, or moving forward has been scoped. The limits have been changed. It's now been split into 2 portions. So the northern portion is what we're moving forward with on design, and that's the Rock Hill to the Mills Gap portion. So just as a heads up, in the next month or 2, we should be getting a schedule of more coordination meetings. So we'll jump right back into, all the stakeholders getting back together. I'm sure, hopefully, this is a centrally managed project. We'll have a kind of a kickoff meeting, get everybody back to speed. We have Division 13 and 14 and 11 have regular meetings with the Park Service. So those, projects like Sweeten Creek have been on our agenda, and they come up periodically. So they'll be at the table, and all the stakeholders. I just wanted to touch on the Mills Gap Road project. Right away is still ongoing, and we do have a let date of June 2025 for that one. The I-4409, which is the interchange in Black Mountain, right away has been pushed out, but is now currently scheduled to start in July, so we're really close on that one. We have a June of 2025 let date. That may need to be adjusted out a bit in the region. Maybe most of you are aware we have tree cutting moratoriums, and so there's a bat species or 3 that may conflict with that let date. So the contractor can't just start cutting trees. We may adjust that a bit to work on that. And then I want to give a quick update on Haywood Road. It's the resurfacing project, which includes more than just the resurfacing. We're at the finish line, or near the finish line. We've had some recent coordination with stakeholders. We do have plans that are essentially final plans, but are still, we're able to tweak a little bit. We had a let date of August for that one, and just yesterday evening, I shifted that out 2 months. This is a division managed project, but it's centrally let, and they have a kind of a longer window of review time, and you need all your certifications and agreements in place before you submit the plans and everything for their review. There's also a funding authorization process we go through. So making that August let date isn't possible at this time, but currently we have just about everything in place. But again, we're still coordinating on, final design tweaks. The agreements that we enter into with the city of Asheville have been submitted to staff, and so they need some, extra review time. That's kind of why I've pushed out the date another couple of months. And again, to be clear, that delay is not because the city is delaying and needing to look at the agreements. They need their time to do their due diligence and process the agreements or negotiate. So those are the main projects that I had updates on. Does anybody have any questions on any of those or others that I've missed? Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Division 14.
All right. We'll start on project development. Same projects that you've been seeing for a while, since we haven't been able to add anything in some time. I did want to call attention to a couple of bridges that are on I-40, HB 0003 and HB 0004. Actually, Logan had these in the TIP amendments.
and they'll have to be there the next meeting as well because they're being pushed out to next fiscal year. Probably July of 2024 is going to be the let date, but they did not meet those current let dates that you see on this sheet. There's also just a couple of really it's small projects, some highway safety projects, some installing pedestrian beacons. You haven't seen those on this list. HS-2014K and 2014Y. Just be aware of those. Sometimes those highway safety projects can do a lot to alleviate a safety concern in the corridor. So much appreciative that we're able to let some of those. In Henderson County, just note that there's a bridge over Southern Railroad on State Road 1545 that was added this time around. It's letting not until 2029. Just wanted Henderson County folks to be aware of that. In Henderson County, pavement rehab project on I-26 going to Henderson County line, Polk County line, that got moved out a couple of years. And then several spot safety projects were added in that you can take a look. Spot safety projects, the project ID starts with an SS. So take a look at those and just keep in mind that all dates are subject to change, as always, on these project development projects. On the construction, does anybody have any questions on those before we move to construction updates? All right. So in Haywood County, be aware that the resurfacing on I-40 is cranking back up. I-40 westbound looked like it was suffering from that on my drive over today. The bridges that are near Jonathan Creek, the two bridges that have been under construction on I-40 for a while, still one lane in each direction. Originally scheduled for both lanes to be open in May. That's not going to happen until June, mainly due to weather delays. In Haywood County, the two bridges there where 19 cuts off to go to Maggie Valley, and also the Richland Creek Bridge, which is real near that interchange. Both of those have started, as well as the project on Russ Avenue. I-26 update, most of the concrete pavement structure in Henderson County is complete, actually. So the traffic shifts you'll be seeing will be putting traffic onto its permanent alignment, hopefully soon this summer, for sure. That completion date of May of next year will probably be beat, which doesn't happen very often. Henderson County, the same projects you've been seeing for a while. Green River Bridge on I-26, the westbound lanes have shifted to the center between the two bridges. Eastbound lane is still where it's at, and later this year you'll see traffic shifting the other direction so that they can work on the eastbound lanes of the bridge. Holland Lake Road, that schedule did move out as anticipated from, I think it was December of 2024. It's moved out to July of 25. Yeah, I think that's, the Coosa Trail is underway now, has been for a few months. And I think that's it for the construction updates. Questions from anybody?
We're doing a really good job on Russ Avenue, keeping traffic flowing, so thank you.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
The Transportation Planning Branch. 15.
Okay. So, starting off with statewide news and announcements. We are now 1 year into the Clean Transportation Plan and implementing it. And this includes, efforts to increase EV registrations, EV charging stations, other clean fuel initiatives, reduced other forms of air pollution coming from cars. And we've had good success. We hit our EV enrollment registration targets. but we're not sitting on our laurels. So I did clip some of the efforts that are coming up this next year, including expanding and making permanent the clean transportation team, increasing or not increasing, finding more ways to reduce emissions from construction efforts. If you don't know, concrete and asphalt mixing is highly energy intensive, and things like that. And we're also expanding multimodal and connected systems. So that's the big news. And more enjoyable news, 2023 Wildflower Awards came out. There were 10 awards given across the state, I do believe. And Division 13 raked in one of those for their Madison County plantings. Having lived all throughout the Southeast, I will say North Carolina has the best wildlife program. Having seen the barren landscapes of certain Florida interstates. In more branch news, there are no current traffic forecasts that I'm aware of. 3 were recently completed. Updates to Amboy, Swing Creek Road, and bridges and modernization in Hendersonville. For CTP and MTP schedules, these are a little dry, but the CTP, we did have meetings in March and April with each of the counties. We're trying to compile those comments so that we can update the document and hopefully come back to you in a month or two. For the MTP, consultants are under contract. Don't think the first meetings have been scheduled yet, or I haven't heard of the scheduling, but those are going to be starting quite soon. And it's still a long way till September 2025, but for those who were around 4 years ago when we went through this, we all know it takes a year to put the plan together, or 2 years to put the plan together. So we don't actually have a lot of spare time. Let's see. I also always like to bring you something from around the state, kind of in other modes: trains, planes, automobiles, and boats. So train news, we continue to set record ridership numbers, both for last year and for the first couple months of this year. It's pretty exciting. We also, of course, are putting in the westward expansion proposal submitted to the spot. And we had a presenter here a few months ago talking about Asheville to Hendersonville, and I would just get a chuckle if that happened first. Finally, small news, DMV is launching a kiosk program. This is still in pilot, but if you need simple things from the DMV, this may be an alternative than standing in line and going through the typical office environment. They're going to be conveniently located in grocery stores. However, when I get my license renewed this summer, I'm going to have to go to the office to get my whole real ID settled up. I think that is still planning on coming in 2025 if you intend to fly or access a federal building. Make sure you have a real ID. That is it for me for official updates. We're, of course, dealing with retirements in my branch. The branch left at the beginning of the month. A supervisor leaves next week. So there's probably going to be a lot of change and turnover here. But we deal with it as we deal with it. Any questions?
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Regarding wildflowers, it's easy for us, being so very busy, that as we haul up and down our interstates and highways, I was in a discussion with NCDOT about what we don't have at exit 23. My attention was called to what we do have at exit 24. Thank you, it's absolutely fantastic. I had been whizzing by it and not paid attention, but since talking about it, it's fantastic, and we really appreciate what you do there. It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Next is NCDOT Integrated Mobility Division updates.
I don't believe we have anyone from IMDs here today. Just to note, they have made great trail state funding available. I believe that was sent out to the TCC and board last month. But that's a unique set of state funds that have been made available for trails and greenways.
Oh, I see Suzette.
Suzette has to hop off for 2 o'clock.
Okay. So no federal highway.
You do have federal highway updates in your packet. Suzette has been fantastic about providing those updates, so please feel free to look through and reach out with any questions.
And then subcommittee work group report.
I won't run through all the different subcommittees and work groups. I'll just say that we have a lot that are still active, especially the prioritization subcommittee. As Anthony noted, we had some great discussions on some of the business items that came to that group. The 5307 subrecipient work group met in April 25th. We talked about the FY24 allocation as well as some of the things that are needed to program all of the funds with us as well as the subrecipients of those funds. So we had a really good discussion with that group as well. The Hellbender Trail Stakeholder Group is continuing to meet. Also, in your packet are all of the special studies that we currently have programmed. There are a lot, just to note, but we are making progress on lots of them. We are anticipating that the Reed Creek Greenway study will be wrapping up this fiscal year, as well as the Ridgecrest Connector Greenway study in Black Mountain. So we're hoping this list will get a little bit shorter by August. But as Daniel noted, we have our 2050 socioeconomic projection study that is up and going. That is a big, interesting study. And so that looks at how much growth our region's anticipating, where that growth is likely to go, and what that means for our region's transportation network. Our CTP and MTP update, an update on that is we have executed a contract with a consultant, so that is now underway. Safe Streets for All Regional Action Plan, you all should have received an invitation to a leadership summit, which is in 2 weeks.
June 4th, Tuesday, June 4th.
Tuesday, June 4th, however many weeks that is. So please attend if you can. That is a big region-wide effort in conjunction with the Land to Sky RPO. Also the Woodfin Weaverville Greenway study, we selected a consultant for that project. And so we are getting underway with contracting, scoping, and getting that underway soon. With the Buncombe County multimodal, I need to update that, the pedestrian master plan. That is just a little bit behind. We hope to take that out for procurement relatively soon. So a whole lot of studies, but a whole lot of movement as well. Also in your agenda packet, we do have updates with our locally administered projects. Just as a reminder, the MPO receives about $5.5 million per year in funds that can be used for building things. And we have a whole lot of projects, 3 pages worth of projects that have MPO funds on them. So we have been requesting quarterly updates from project managers just to provide a brief idea of where those projects are and how they're moving along, just for everyone's information. And you'll see a lot of those line up with the division updates as well. Also with staff, I will note that I am very sad to announce that Logan will be moving on from the MPO team. Logan has been doing a whole lot of stuff. The updated TIP software, a lot of the committees and work groups that I think some of you are a part of, there's been a lot of movement on those. So as I said to the TCC, Logan, it has been incredible watching you come into the MPO and grow, and we appreciate all your work. Logan will be moving on to the state of Montana. So, a little ways away, a number of roads.
Highway project.
Yeah. If there's any, I don't know if there is any bad news coming from Montana, but if you find any, feel free to forward it to Logan. We have been doing that, somewhat gently. But we do have some positions open that we plan on interviewing for in the near future. So, thank you, Logan.
I will note that Montana is much closer to the Yellowstone supervolcano that could erupt in the next 10 to 15,000 years.
Tomorrow. Incredible point. Thank you.
And that's why we trained him in long-range planning.
Thank you again. Thank you, Wilkie. Legislative updates.
There actually is quite a bit that has been going on. So just a few to note. I'll share my screen really quick. One is something I thought was already done, was the Senate confirming Joey Hopkins as the NCDOT secretary. He's been acting secretary for some time. That's been moving forward. House Bill 929 was introduced or filed. That's increased state troopers in Mecklenburg County and also revised penalties for passing school buses. There's another bill that actually came up on this list, Senate Bill 872, that was also filed. That bill aims at providing funding to install cameras and authorize camera images from school buses to be used to enforce school bus passing laws. So school bus passing is definitely on the minds of some folks in the General Assembly.
There's been some accidents statewide.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
That's good context. And House Bill 926, that was filed to provide $9.6 million for a new passenger rail station in Harrisburg. Just bring that up with some other passenger rail considerations in our region and beyond. But that has just been filed, at least that I've seen. Senate Bill 821, that was introduced. That's a bill that would provide $1 million in state funding towards corridor ID projects. I did send an email to our local partners in Asheville, Buncombe, and Black Mountain that we received word from NCDOT that there will most likely be a request for non-federal funds at some point in the near future. With the corridor ID planning that's going on and the grant that was awarded through Federal Rail, there is a requirement for non-federal funds. And so what we've heard is it'll most likely be in the area of $250,000 that's requested for the Asheville to Salisbury project. Just in terms of that context, I think there's been some folks in contact with the General Assembly about providing more funding to cover the non-federal portion. So we'll keep an eye on that one. And also House Bill 198 that introduced a number of legislative changes with NCDOT, and I think that's been coming up for some time. So those are some of the big ones. I think there's also an orphan road study bill that was recently introduced as well. I'll try to get some more information on that. But those are the legislative updates we have for today.
This is Chuck McGrady. Can I jump in there?
Yes, please have at it, Chuck.
On the last bill noted there, which is the so-called agency bill, the importance of the bill for us in one sense is we haven't been able to do any bond projects recently because of just a really technical issue that could be easily corrected but wasn't corrected last year. Hopefully the bill will put some more money actually into some of the various projects that need to be funded. Therefore, it's a real important bill for the department. My editorial comment was going to be that the legislature has added a lot of other stuff, and something that is not going to be liked by towns like Hendersonville and Flat Rock and Asheville, and is a loosening of the rules as to what DOT will cut down in terms of trees to allow access to billboards. A hot spot for me, but I mean, you can't, that's why it was attached there, so that it's attached to a very important bill and the department can't do much about it.
They have a tendency of doing that.
Excuse me?
Thank you. They have a tendency of putting unrelated items together on bills to force them through.
You're being nice. It's not just a tendency. It seems to be
I
the way things get done. And, you know, that's why you've got a 600-page budget. There's all sorts of stuff in the budget that has not a darn thing to do with spending money. Anyway, I'll get off my high horse.
It forces me to go to Raleigh much more than I would choose. Announcements.
Do you want to talk about the leadership summit really quick?
Yes. So, like Tristan said, for the Safe Streets for All plan, that just kicked off recently. We're having a leadership summit on June 4th. It is going to be at the Ivy Gym on AB Tech's campus. You all should have gotten an email about it. If you didn't, please let me know after the meeting, and I'll be happy to forward that on to you. We're going to be talking about priorities in the region, what you all want to see out of the safety action plan, and how we can help facilitate buy-in from our local governments. It should be a really fruitful conversation, and we're really excited to kick this plan off and get it moving.
Speaking of safety.
Yeah, I've been voluntold for a safety panel at the NC State Transportation Summit. If you are attending Greensboro or in Greensboro the next week, I will be on a panel talking about safety. Amongst other great topics that will be covered at the summit.
I'll see you there. Absolutely. Topics for next meeting.
I think the big thing will be the draft regional impact points, but I think we'll provide some updates on some other projects that are moving forward.
Any more public comment? And with that, thank you everyone, and we will adjourn.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.